No, just
Good
joking.
for you.
It's gonna throw me off. Okay, well, we are gonna get started. Today, we are going over how to do market analysis and how to price our listings accurately so that we get them sold. We're gonna not really live in the course material because I want to spend the majority of the class time actually doing real CMA. Okay, so let's get started. How many of you have completed an actual CMA so far? Show of hands. One? No one else?
I don't know if I'm doing it correctly.
You don't know if you're doing it correctly.
I don't know if I'm doing it correctly.
Okay. Okay, well, whether you're working on the buyer side or the seller side, a CMA is critical. So this class, the intent of this class is pricing your listing to sell. And what I'm gonna say is this class is applicable to both buyers and sellers, because when we're writing our buyer contract, we should be doing the exact same thing to make sure that the offers that we're writing are gonna be able to appraise and meet contract value. Okay, so we should be doing CMAs on both sides of the house. Now, with that said, if you don't have a listing and you don't have buyers yet, does that mean we can't do CMAs? What should we be doing? Right. So a good thing to do is go into the MLS and once a day, pick one property a day. And it's real easy. Go and pick a new listing. All you have to do when you get into the MLS is go up here, search residential. You go active here, put 0 to 1. So that's any house that just hit the market in the last day. And go through here and pick any one of these 57 houses that just hit the market and run a CMA on it. And see if you think it's priced properly, okay? We also talked about touring properties. While you're not busy is the perfect time to go to these properties. And again, make sure they're vacant ones. I don't want you having owners leave their houses so that you can go tour them without a buyer, but pick a vacant house and go tour it and get comfortable with walking through a home and practice how you would show that home if you were there with a buyer. You could do it by yourself. Or you could take a friend, a spouse, a parent, a child, whomever, and pretend like you're showing them the house so that you get really comfortable with walking through that property. It's very, very, very important that you're not doing this for the first time, the second time, the 10th time with your very first live buyer, okay? You wanna know when you walk into a property, how to scan the property quickly and know what rooms we're going to take them to. When we get into a property, we don't want to kill the excitement by taking them to a secondary bedroom first because we made the wrong turn, right? So we want to learn how to walk in the door, get a really quick lay of the land and figure out what direction we want to go. We want to show them features. The features that people get excited about on houses are typically the living room, the kitchen, the master bedroom, the backyard. So let's go to those areas. And, obviously you don't want to jump and ping pong through the house, but try to direct it to those key areas, get them really excited about the house before we go show them the secondary bedrooms or the things like that that aren't super exciting. Okay. But we can't do those things if we don't practice and become really good at them on our own before we do it with a real buyer for the first time. Okay. So I really want you guys doing a CMA every single day and at least 3 times a week, go see a property or just pick 3 properties and go one day and knock them out. Okay. Vacant homes, please. It could be new construction or just an existing home that's vacant. Schedule the showing. Do not go without scheduling the showing and go tour properties, get really comfortable in these properties. Wouldn't it be great if you did a CMA on a property and then went and toured that property? and saw what it was like you were kind of walking through the whole process, okay? It's just very, very important that you start practicing now what you're going to be doing every single day for the rest of your career, okay? All right. Now, yes.
Can you show me where it says if the house is vacant or not?
Yeah. So there is, I don't know if I've added it.
I went to look at a house yesterday that said it was vacant, and when I got there, it was not vacant, and there was no key box on it. It was really.
Were you at the right house?
I checked, you know, even
Yeah, yeah.
the sign off, what was it, showing time. I just left.
Okay, so when you're looking at listings here, it's in this middle section here. It says occupied down here, right here. See where it says occupied? Yes. And there is a way to add that to your criteria. So see where this says add remove here? You can add that. And then you can go down here and you can occupied, no. And then there's, you can see, like, this is all of the ones that are marked as not occupied. Okay. This is just the ones that hit the market in the last 24 hours, but you can go back. I mean, you can search whatever you want. You can look for houses that are for sale within 5 miles of where you live. You know how to do that. And if not, I'll show you, like, you can go within 5 miles of your house. That way you're not driving all over, and look at vacant houses that are close by you, whatever you need to do. Or if you're going to specialize, want to start focusing on building your brand in a particular area, you can pick that area and go search that area, okay? But let's start making sure we're getting into houses and spending time doing real estate activities every single day, okay? So we're not going to live in the material of this class, because all this material talks about is how to do CMAs. So we're going to actually do CMAs. We're going to live in Realist, we're going to live in our market reports, and we're going to live in Matrix or our MLS during this class, okay? So if you have a computer, you can follow along. You don't have to have your computer up. We can, because I'm going to do everything on the screen. We're going to talk through it. But I really want you guys to kind of ask questions. I'm going to, when we're going through doing the CMAs, I'm going to say, how would you bound this search? And I want this to be an interactive class. I don't want to spend the next couple of hours up here just lecturing you guys. You guys have to learn this. And I don't care if you're wrong, just answer and throw some feedback out, okay? So the first thing I want to start with is, how many of you guys use and look at the market report that our office puts out for you guys and knows how to read it? Yes. Total market overview. I know Richard sends it out on his social media all the time. Does anybody else? Total market overview. Okay. This is something you guys, even if you don't share it on your social media or share it with clients, it's something that you guys should be taking a look at. So on the my.kweliteokc.com page, under files, there's this total market overview, and this gets updated monthly. Okay. So this is for September. This is so it goes from the last 30 days. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of it. You guys really need to look at this consistently. Let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. Okay, so yep. So we were at files, and then it's just total market overview. Okay. And okay, so in here, the great part about this is this breaks down every price category. So you can see on the far, in column A, on the far left-hand side, it breaks it down into price increments. And then it tells you how many active listings there are in that price range, how many pending listings, how many have closed in the last 30 days, how many closed in the last 6 months, and then the supply in terms of months. So do you guys know how to explain what supply in months means? What supply in months means is that at the rate that properties in that range are selling, if not a single new listing hit the market in that range, what is left that is currently active, so we'll look at 0 to 99. If there's 361 listings, if not a single new one came on the market at the rate that those are selling, it would take 1.5 months for there to not be a single house left in that price range. Okay. So look where I mean, we used to have 2 to 3 months inventory in pretty much every category. And down here in the high-end luxury, it was always like 18 to 24 months. That was what our market was historically. Some of these were consistently 6 months, and now we're looking at less than a month. I mean, gosh, you're wondering why we can't get houses. It's because in the 150 to 175, there's less than 1 month's inventory, right? We're struggling. So we should be, if we're writing offers and you have buyers and they're saying, you know, I had somebody, one of the coaching agents call me last night, and they had a client who was struggling with the fact that they didn't understand why they had to go over list price, or they didn't believe that everything was competing. All you have to do is pull this out and say, these are the numbers. This is the range that you're in. There is simply not inventory. So there are more buyers than there are sellers, and everything is going to be competing in that range. Yes, sir.
What I've done since you had this,
Mm-hmm.
I will actually print it in color.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it from listing verification, my first consultation.
Yep.
Not the very beginning, but in the process to start the process of the price of the house, or offer an house, to say, here's the price range you're looking at. I explain right straight across. They understand, especially the market, that number is everything.
100%.
I like to explain.
So let's walk across here. So we got to the month supply, right? Now, this is just telling you what the average price range is between when you're looking at 100 to 124. The average in there, they're listing at about 115. They're selling with no reduction in price. They're selling at 100%, and they're averaging 4 days on the market. Now, you got to keep in mind, this is like crap properties and great properties, right? So there's going to be some that are sitting and selling below market, and then others that are selling for over market. So the average is selling for full asking in 4 days, which is phenomenal. Now we get even crazier because these are selling for 101.5%, 101.1%. And over here is the average days on market for houses in this price range. Now, caveat to this, this is the entire MLS, okay? I want you guys to understand that. We're looking at what's happening, and this hits everything from Blanchard, Newcastle, up to Edmond, some Guthrie, Tuttle, Tinker. This is everything, okay? So obviously we need to hone in on your specific area where your buyer is buying and where your seller is selling. But this just gives you an idea of what's happening in our Oklahoma market, okay? So this is a good resource to study, but this is by no means, if you're getting a listing in the 255 price range, going to tell you for sure that this is what it's going to be. It's going to be 100.6% in 4 days. You need to now go in and get into the micro section of the city that will tell you about that specific property, okay? Because this is the big, 10,000 foot view of Oklahoma City MLS, okay? Know this, study this, look at this every month, see what's going on, and then we're gonna hone in and get down to the more granular level with each individual property, okay? So every month we should be printing this up, putting this up, and looking at it, comparing it. Look at what the market's doing. Look at what happened, keep September's, and then look at what happens in October. Compare them side by side, see how our market's changing. When people are asking you what's going on with the market, if you can look at August, September, October, and see how things have changed over the last 3 months, you're really going to start to become a subject matter expert on how the market is changing, whether it's good or bad, what price points are changing, and where the hot market is and where things are cooling off. Okay. All right. So we're going to use this for that 10,000 foot view, but really this class is going to focus in on the much lower level. So can somebody tell me what a CMA is? Go ahead.
Comparative market analysis.
Okay, what does that mean?
It takes other homes in the area that have recently sold and gives you an overview, try to find the homes that are the most like the one you're trying to sell to see what that home would price for in the market.
Very good. So we are looking at similar properties. When we say similar how? Condition, size. We can, what I will say is we don't want to hone so much in on bedroom and bathroom count, okay? Because from an appraisal standpoint, you don't get value for a bedroom. You can get a little value for a bathroom because there's a fixed cost to adding a bathroom, but you get the cost on the square footage. So whether you have a 2,000 square foot house with 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, there's not going to be a price difference on that, okay? If it's 2,000 square foot, it is what it is. Okay, you get value for like a garage. You might get a little bit of extra value for a 3rd car garage, things like that.
How do you know how much value something has? So I guess we're gonna talk about that.
No, that's a great question though.
If I'm looking at something and there's an extra value, like, I don't know, like it's $10,000 or $5,000 or.
You cannot say that a bathroom is X amount, or a 3rd car garage is X amount, or a pool is X amount. Because in one neighborhood, a pool could give you almost no value, but in another neighborhood, a pool could give you $50,000 or $60,000. Why is that?
It's just the desirability of who is buying the house in the neighborhood.
A bit, yes, you're kind of on the right line. Because if you're in a neighborhood and there's no comps that have pools, then the appraiser effectively cannot find a justified value for that pool. So they can't give it a real value. But if you're in a neighborhood where there have been houses that have bought and sold with pools and houses that have bought and sold without pools, then they can effectively go in and look and say, okay, these houses without pools sold for this price. These houses with pools sold for this. And the difference is 50,000 or 30,000. But if they don't have that data to compare, then they really cannot, by the ANSI standards, which are the guides that the appraisers follow, determine a real value for it. Okay, same thing with, it's a lot easier with bathrooms, right? Or garages, because you can find those easier. But what you would want to do is look at houses that have 3 cars versus look at houses that have 2 cars that are similar and see what the difference is. And it may be one amount in this neighborhood, but it may be a totally different amount in a different neighborhood. And that's how granular you guys have to get when we're looking at comping properties out. It's just not a standard, I'm gonna throw 5,000 at an extra garage. Okay, we got to dig into that mini population and see what's happening right there. Okay, does everybody understand that?
So pretty much you can't assign value based on this is what it costs to put it in. It's gonna be
Doesn't matter.
based on what you're selling for.
I'll give you a great example. You could put $150,000 pool in and you may get $25,000 back for it.
Some people sometimes consider a pool a liability, because I know I had one friend. It was expensive.
Well, that's a buyer's opinion. That doesn't mean that it doesn't get value, right? The value is determined by, are there other houses in the neighborhood or in comps in the area that have a pool that we can determine what that pool is worth in that particular area. So some buyer, yeah, I mean, you'll have buyers that'll say, no, I'm not buying a house with a pool. I don't want to deal with maintaining it. That's a personal preference, just as much as I don't want to buy a house with a master bedroom upstairs, or I don't want to buy a house where the secondary bedrooms are on the same side as the master bedroom. Those are preferences, but not necessarily value determining factors. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I want to dig into a couple CMAs. So we're going to start, the first property we're going to look at is 13635 Valley Ridge in Edmond. So we're going to pretend that we just got a phone call to list this property. Okay. So the very first thing we do when we get a call to list a property is we're going to find out as much information about this property that we can. So when you're on the phone with the person and they're asking you to list the house, one of the things that you need to ask them is, hey, since you've purchased the house, what have you done to improve the house? Right? Because we could probably, in most houses, be able to go find the previous listing and get a good idea of what it looked like, but it doesn't tell us what they've done to it, right? So let's go ahead and have the conversation of what have you done to the house since you've owned the house? And let's start making our notes of what all things that they've improved, okay? These are in our qualifying conversations while we're setting the appointment. So just talk through, this should happen on every single call that you get with a listing. What are some of the things that we want to know about a property?
If they did like a remodel or if they added on square footage.
Absolutely. Remodel is what could just be updating the existing square footage that was there. Adding square footage is a big one. Now, I would always want to know about adding square footage before we show up to the property. Why is that?
Square footage by the county is different than real.
Right, but why would you want to know that before you actually show up for a listing appointment? Why would that be a good question to find out? Hey, I converted my attic or I added an addition. Square footage price, right? If we base our square footage on the old before they did the addition, and then we show up and now we're 500 square feet off, well, we're going to not have accurate information and accurate comps when we go to actually show up for the listing appointment and price the property. Okay. So it's very, very important to find out, hey, have you done any additions? Have you done any remodels? Other things that you can ask, and you can do this at the appointment or when you're there, or you can do this on the phone, but what about like age of roof, age of the major mechanical features of the house? In Oklahoma, if you find a listing, if you're listing a house and the roof is 10 years old, what should we do? Well, we don't want to automatically replace it, but what should we do if we're going to list that house? What is one of the things that we should do just to kind of save some headache in the long run? Have the roof inspected at the time we list it, right? Because what has happened that has bit us in the butt in the past is we wait because the seller's like, oh no, my roof is fine, or they don't want to deal with it. Then we get under contract and then inspections, we got 30-day close and inspections are 10 days in. Then we get the TRR 12 days in. And now they're saying, oh, the roof needs to be replaced. Well, now you need to file a claim, get an adjuster out, get it approved, and hopefully the lender will approve you closing without having the roof replaced and escrowing the roof funds. I mean, that you're jumping through hoops, causing unnecessary headache. So if we know we're buying a house or we're listing a house that has an older roof, if there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, since we know it's 10-year-old roof, let's just be proactive. Let's get a roofer out here to look at it. If they feel it warrants a claim, we can at least get that ball rolling. That way we're not extending closing, busting deals 2 weeks into contract because we don't have all of our ducks in a row, okay? So just some things we need to start finding out up front, especially right now with all the hail and the ice storms that have happened. Roofing companies are behind with COVID, materials are behind. It's just a nightmare to get these things done. If you see broken windows, go ahead and start getting those things ordered up front. Because I'm telling you, windows, especially if it's going to sell FHA, I have seen lenders not allow those to close until those windows come in. I have also seen lenders allow us to escrow 1.5 times the amount of the window to get it done. So there are workarounds, but again, you're scrambling at the last minute and jumping through hoops and stressing everybody out when we can just be proactive at these listing appointments and say, hey, I see we've got a cracked window here. Let's go ahead and get that on order. Hey, your roof is 10 years old. Let's go ahead and get that inspected. If the roofer says it's good, then we have that to show for it. If they say, hey, it probably needs a claim filed, then let's get that ball rolling. At least we have our documentation and our ducks in a row, okay? We want to be the leaders through this process, okay? Because I guarantee you no homeowner is really gonna just voluntarily say, yeah, I wanna get my roof replaced, right? But we want to start getting that ball rolling. Okay, so we're gonna ask these questions on the phone. Have you done any additions? What have you updated? Those kinds of things when we're qualifying the listing appointment. We're gonna set the listing appointment. Now, here's where the real work begins, because as soon as you hang up that phone, we need to go in to this listing with kind of an idea, because they're going to want to know when you're there what you want to list the house for. Okay, now you don't know what this house is going to look like. You can walk into it and be like, oh my gosh, what the heck have I just walked into, right? And they told you, oh, my house is great, because everybody thinks their house is great, right? So you could walk into a house and just want to die because it smells like cat pee and there's crayons on the wall and they think it's the Taj Mahal, right? Or you can walk into a house and it could be the cutest darn thing you've ever seen and it's way better than what you thought it was. So how do you prepare for that when you're doing your CMA at home prior to ever stepping foot in the house?
Like a range.
Did everybody hear that? We do it for a range, okay? So we are going to, when we're looking at this CMA, we're going to have a range in mind that if this house is in not great condition, here's where I'm going to list it. And if this house is in great condition, here's where I'm going to list it, okay? Now, what are we not going to do? Right, or let them see that, right? We're not going to tell them that and we're not going to let them see that. So figure out how you're going to do that. If you're going to like make a small note somewhere, have it somewhere, however you want to do it, okay? But you're not going to be like, hey, if your house is crap, I'm going to list it for 200, but if it's amazing, I'm going to list it for 250, because then you're basically telling them their house is crap if you list it for 200, right? And if they see 250, they're going to get excited and then want to know why they can't list it for 250, okay? Now, on the flip side, so have your range, but don't disclose that. You go to the house, you walk through the house, you see the range, you know the range, you see the condition, and then in your mind, you set the value based on the fact that you've really done your homework, studied your comps, and you know, I'm between here and here. This house is really great, so I'm going to be here. Or this house is a little rough, so I'm going to be here. Okay, so this is the mindset that we're going to have on every single set of comps that we're looking at. Does that everybody understand that philosophy? Okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to do when we get a house is we're going to look for any previous information we can find on this property. So the house that we said we were going to do is 13635 Valley Ridge. So if you know me, you know, oops, I always say less is more on your search. So let's put in as little information as we can, because they could spell things differently. They could put RDG, you know, instead of Ridge, all those good things. So let's just put in the street number, 13635, and then Valley. And we've got 3 matches that have sold in the last 9,000 days. I just always try to go back as far as I can. Now here is kind of what we have, right? So you can see there's a 5,000 ml or a 500,000, a 700,000, and a 900,000. So we're obviously going to go to the most recent one so we could see what it looked like at the most recent sale. Okay, now something interesting here is we can see that at one point in time, it listed for square footage in as 3,039, and then it listed for 3,011. So there was a slight discrepancy in square footage, not a huge amount, so it doesn't kind of give me anxiety, but there's a slight variation in square footage. And then I also see here that it was listed as a 3-bedroom, and then it was listed as a 4-bedroom. So something I want to kind of find out about, okay? Now we're going to click on the most recent one, and we're going to dig into it. So here it says it's a 4-bedroom plus a study, 2 living rooms, 1 acre lot. Okay, so we're going to click on it, and we're going to go through the pictures, and we're going to see kind of what the condition is of the property.
Before you go too far,
Yes.
I visited
Sure, so
Get rid of Ridge. Just leave that. There must have been something. Yeah, maybe you had to vacate it or something still clicked from earlier. Okay, so here we go. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look through this and make note of what we can see, and we're gonna compare this to any, so I'm gonna assume on this case that they said, hey, we just bought this 2 years ago. We really haven't done anything to the property. Okay, so that's the premise we're going into on this particular house. Okay, so we're gonna look, it looks like outside's in good condition. Now, what do we see when we look in here? What are some things that you're gonna want to note when you see a house? Okay, so would there be anything that you would note in here? Okay, so it's got tile entryway. I would note it's got wood floors, it looks like off the living room. Got neutral paint. High ceiling, so this is like maybe a vaulted entryway. Okay, I can see like here the baseboards are upgraded to like the thicker baseboards than the standard, you know, 3-inch baseboards. Okay, so it's got, there's your study. So I'm kind of getting the lay of the land. You kind of come in, you got the study, you got the upstairs going there. Okay, so we got some crown molding, carpet. What would you say as far as carpet condition? Looks like it's in good shape, right? Looks really clean. Okay, so it's got, that was wood tile, it looks like, in the living room. So overall condition looks to be in really good condition, right? Neutral colors, neutral paint. We've got granite countertops. So for comparing it to other houses that maybe don't have granite countertops, we'd want to note that. Stainless steel appliances. So sometimes when you're looking at houses that are a little older, you might want to note that. Okay, so this is going to be the half bath that we saw, big laundry room. So we got crown molding in the master bedroom. So these are just things that we're gonna note. Again, carpet looks like it's in really good shape. Big bathroom, double vanities, walk-in shower. Big secondary bedrooms. All the bedrooms look like they have crown molding. So these are the things that we're noting as we go through here, right? Bonus room. Okay, so now we've got the backyard, we've got fenced in backyard. But there's a small basketball court, but that's not really gonna give you value, but there's no pool, there's no fire pit, there's no gazebo, no pergola. So these are the things that we're gonna kind of note, right? Because we don't want to compare it to those that do, or if we compare it to one that does have more of an outdoor living space, we just want to make sure we adjust for that, okay? So overall, I would say that this one inside is really clean. It's pretty well upgraded on the inside. Like it didn't have like builder grade light fixtures. It had updated light fixtures. It had new paint. It had granite. So overall neat, clean, nice, but no major upgrades on the outside. Okay. So that's what I would look at here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do after I've looked at the pictures and kind of got an idea of the house is I'm going to go to the tax records and see what I can find out about the tax records. So this TX right here will take you directly to the tax record for this property. Okay, now this tells you the legal description here. So it's in a neighborhood called The Ridge, the lot and the block, okay? This just gives you the property tax information here. So when you're running your net sheets, you can pull the accurate tax information. So now we go here and now we've got a couple of different, remember, because we saw one square footage that was like 30, 50 something. Then we saw one that was 3011, and now we see one that's 2956. So what do we think we need to do in this case? Because when we're talking, I mean, so the lowest we have is 2956 and the highest we had was 3050. So we're almost 100 square feet. And when you're looking at properties in this area that are, you know, 125 to 140 a square foot, you could be talking, you know, over $10,000 price swing. What would you suggest? Where will we start here to get to the bottom of this price or to the square footage discrepancy? Where would you start? Well, this is pulling from the county assessor. Where do people find out where the square footage is when they purchase a home? But say it louder.
The appraiser.
Okay, so the appraisal, right? The appraiser comes out when they are purchasing. So as long as they're obtaining financing, an appraiser will come out and appraise the home and they measure the property. So we would say, hey, when you purchase the home, do you have a copy of your appraisal? Because guess what? If they do, that's going to be the square footage that we need to use, unless they've added on. If they've added on, then we need to get it measured. But if they haven't added on and they have their appraisal, that's going to be the most accurate measurement, because the county gets what's filed at the time of construction. And there are times when we're building a home and then you get there and they're like, oh, well, let's bump this out or let's move this, and things change slightly. And moving a wall 6 inches could change a house by a substantial amount, right? So we always want to go by what the latest appraisal says. So if we can get a copy of what that appraisal is, then great, we're going to go and get the actual square footage from that appraisal. If there's a discrepancy and they say, oh, we've added on, then your best bet is going to be to get it measured. Measuring service on most houses ranges between $100 and $175, and they're 100% worth it. Because when you're talking 100 square feet, I wouldn't do it for 15 square feet. It's not a big deal. But when we're talking 50, 75, 100 square feet or more, we could be talking thousands of dollars. And we want to make sure that we're not shortchanging our clients. And on the flip side, we don't want to overlist it and then let them think they're getting more and then have, you know, to deal with a low appraisal because our square footage is off. So I highly recommend prior to listing, we get it measured, okay? And there's tons of measuring services out there, and there's tons of appraisers that do measuring. You can search on our Keller Williams Facebook page for measuring and get plenty of services for those, okay? But make sure that if we see a good chunk that we get to the bottom of it one way or the other, okay? So in this case, we're gonna go with the house was measured and it came back at 3011. So that's the square footage we're gonna go with, okay? All right, so now we see tax record shows 4 bedrooms, MLS shows, or tax record shows 3 bedrooms, MLS shows 4 bedrooms. Now we see that a lot, right? Because people can interpret a study with a closet as a bedroom. And so in the MLS, they'll put 4 bedrooms. So, but in this listing, if you guys remember, it said this is a 4 bedroom plus a study plus 2 living rooms. And it was written out there. So really something's happened here. So we want to get to the bottom of that. So we need to find out, hey, this, you know, we can wait and see it when we're there. We can ask the question. But in this case, we asked the question. And what they did is they had a bonus room that was gigantic. I actually saw this property, so I'll tell you what they did. The bonus room was almost the size of this room. It was maybe a little more narrow, but as wide as this. So all they did was put a wall up in between and made one a bedroom and put a closet and kept the other as the bonus room. So they in fact added a 4th bedroom. So originally built was a 3 bedroom with a stupidly large bonus room, and they split it and made a true 4th bedroom. So that actually was a very valuable improvement because putting up drywall and separating that room cost them less than $2,000. But in taking a home that was over 3,000 square foot in a very family-friendly neighborhood and making it a 4 bedroom with a bonus room and a study made it more appealing to families, right? Because now this can accommodate a larger family. So that would be, you know, a smart upgrade. Okay, so now we've got 4 bedrooms. So that's where that came from. 2 full bathrooms, 1 half bath. And so that the tax records don't really deal with half baths that well. So when you see half bath or total bath discrepancies, you don't need to really worry about that. When we're looking at this, this is just some general information filed on this. There's not a whole lot that you'll get from here because this is all based on the original construction. You'll know if it's a detached garage and stuff like that. So we can kind of skip by that. What we're going to do is we're going to go down here. Now, this is an interesting piece where it says estimated value. What this does, and I take it with a grain of salt, but it is something to look at. So what this, this application within our MLS does is it pulls what they feel are comps, and it gives a range of if it's in terrible condition or if it's in fantastic condition, what the property would sell for. And then it gives you a median, hey, if it's in average condition, here's what will be. The thing it doesn't take into consideration here is it doesn't know what upgrades have been made and things like that, okay? So it's just something to keep an eye on. And this does update every couple of weeks. So when you see like this updated about a week ago. And then down here, this talks about the history of the property. So one great piece of information that you can get if you get a call to list a property is you can see if they've tried listing it and haven't sold it and tried listing it and haven't sold it. Or you can see if it's sold several times over the last couple of years. You can get a really good idea of what's happened with this property. I love to kind of get an idea here, and you can also see what they bought it for. So if you see, hey, they just bought this in 2020 for $365 and they're turning around and trying to sell it right now, unless there's been something crazy that's happened, which there has, so they may be in a, you know, good position here. We don't know until we look, but you can kind of see, well, they just bought it in 2020 in April of 2020 for $365. So going into your listing appointment, arm yourself with the knowledge of what they bought it for, when they bought it for. And by the way, right here, what does this tell you? So what does this tell me right here specifically about this property? If I'm going to a listing appointment on this house, what does this tell me?
I think it's a VA mortgage.
It's a VA loan. What is the mortgage amount?
Full price.
365. And when did they finance it? Less than a year, well, about a year ago, right? So they financed it for 365 a year ago. So if I'm running comps and I'm like, hey, this, this can sell for 375 in today's market, we're going to have a conversation about them bringing cash to the table. Okay, if they really need to sell it. Again, if you see it and it says, oh, like say these first two are gone and it was like 291 and now they've got, it's worth 375. Well, now, they've got a good chunk of equity in it. It's less of a concern, but you can get a good idea of what their financial position is going into the listing appointment. You're not using this against them. You're just arming yourself and preparing yourself for the conversations that you're going to have. Okay. Preparing your mindset going into it, because if you have to tell somebody, hey, you're going to have to sell this house, you're going to have to bring 20 grand to the table. That's a whole different conversation than, hey, selling this house, you're going to make 100 grand. Okay. Whole different conversation. You need to be prepared to have both conversations. Okay. So use this information and make sure you just know, what kind of situation you're dealing with and what you're walking into. Okay. The realist report is one of my favorite things. And I print this up and take it to every single listing appointment. And if there's questions, if there's things that I don't know, I circle them. And even if I don't have to ask them, I can answer a lot of those questions on my own when I walk the property. But mark the things you want to find out more about, like that 3 versus 4 bedroom, highlight that. So when you're there, you can just see what happened, or if the square footage, if you don't know about that, just circle it when you're there. Make sure you remind yourself to ask about it. Okay. All right. So now we have kind of gotten all the information we can about the history of the property. Now we're going to actually go look for comps. So we're going to go to the MLS. We're going to go to search, residential, quick search. Okay. Now, when we're searching, we're going to start here. What do we want to look for? Solds, yes. And actives. I do recommend we look at pending, and we can keep an eye on coming soon now, just to see, because coming soon is going to be what? Active and coming soon are what to our listing?
Current.
Competition, right? It's our competition. So we have to be in market with our competition. So we don't want to forget about that, right? Now, the solds are for sure are what?
Well, they're sold for, that's like what they sold for that
Yes.
value.
They set the market. So they're going to be our comps, right? We're going to narrow them down. They're going to set our comps. So the solds are going to set our comps, and the coming soon and the actives are going to show us what our competition is. Now, our pending very well could become a comp, because between now and when we get our appraisal ordered, if any of those close, they will become a comp. So we do need to keep an eye on those, good or bad, because there could be one of those out there that's a real low offer, but it's a really good comp for ours, and we need to figure out what it is. So we need to keep an eye on those too. Really want to focus on actives and solds, actives coming soons and solds, but we do still need to keep a pulse on the pendings. Okay. So I always start with 6 months. Okay. So we're going to go back about 6 months for our comps to start. Now, what I'm going to tell you is your best bet with comps is to start super tight and expand, as opposed to getting super broad and then narrow. okay? So we're gonna start tight. If we don't get what we need, we're gonna chunk it out piece by piece until we get enough good comps for what we want, okay? So I'm gonna start with 6 months. Now, I'm gonna make a note to talk about timing in market. Okay. I'm gonna table a comment on that because I don't want to get lost in this CMA, but we're gonna go 6 months. Now, what is one of the very first things we need to hone in on when we're doing this CMA for this property? Neighborhood. Okay, so this neighborhood was called The Ridge. This is fun because the way that they put it in, as we saw in Realist, and I'm not going to click back there, but it said, I don't know if you saw it, saw Ridge space and then in parentheses, the, right? So if we put The Ridge, if the person entering it didn't put The Ridge, it's going to omit it, right? So we want to make sure that we're getting everything that's in this neighborhood. So we're going to use asterisks. And I recommend in this case, when there's a the at the beginning, to cap it on both ends, because some neighborhoods could have like a phase. So it could be Ridge phase 1, Ridge phase 2, and then somebody could put in The Ridge and then you wouldn't get that one. So I recommend putting asterisk, Ridge, asterisk. Now, that is going to pull anything that has the word Ridge in it. So we really now have to narrow it down. So we know this Ridge is in Deer Creek schools. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in Deer Creek and narrow it down. So now I want to just make sure we're getting our neighborhood and we're not getting anything outside of that neighborhood. So I'm going to go to the map feature. And still, we're all over Deer Creek because there's still a lot of neighborhoods with the word Ridge in it. So you have a couple of options here, but again, I'd rather you get everything in this neighborhood than put The Ridge or just put Ridge and miss things, okay? That's why we're gonna do it this way. I'm gonna zoom in to where this neighborhood is located, and I'm going to use the draw feature and get it that way. So this neighborhood, I know because I mapped the property, is right here, just north of Waterloo and just west of Penn. So I'm going to go in here, and this is the neighborhood I'm trying to target. And I'm just going to use my feature here and grab this area. Now, back in the olden days, the mapping feature of the MLS was really crappy, and like realtors used to map things incorrectly quite often. They have improved that. So when you're inputting a listing and you hit like map according to address, they have gotten really accurate now. So it's a less likelihood that you're going to miss stuff doing it this way. Before, realtors used to map houses in Edmond and in Norman and never pay attention to it. And if you did this, you'd miss it. But now that's with the new system that they have, it's really hard to do. So you're pretty safe going this route. So now in the last 6 months, we have 16 matches. So I just I'm curious to see what they are. Do we have any really good comps? So we're kind of all over the place, down 2,400 up to 3,500. And let me see here, I'm going to add. So if you want to add a column, you right click and you hit insert column. And I want to try to do year built. So I want to, because I want to make sure I'm not getting new construction missed in here. See, I've got several new constructions in here. Now, why wouldn't we want to include a new construction on ours? Why wouldn't we want to include a new construction as a comp?
Age of house you're trying to comp,
Right. Well, we want to look at it from a competition perspective. Okay, so new construction is always something that we're gonna look at from a competition perspective, but it will never be used as a comp from an appraisal perspective on an existing home. Because that appraisal will never mix the two. Even if a home is a year old, they're gonna, if they do use a new construction home in comparison, they're gonna make an adjustment for effective age. Okay, and they're gonna decrease that value. Even if you're selling a 2020 versus a 2021, there's always gonna be a slight adjustment for that. So we never want to use it as a comp, but we do want to use it as what our competition is. So we're going to keep the actives in there, but we're not going to use it as an actual comp for our value. Okay, so in the sold comps, we only have a couple of new construction, so that's fine. So I'm going to leave the new construction in here just for the sake of the active listings, but we're going to omit them. Now, what we definitely want to do is, you see here, so Meadow Ridge, this is an example of where a realtor mapped their listing wrong. Because here we got very specific in that neighborhood, and still this one crept in here, which means that whoever this listing agent is pinned the location of this address in a neighborhood that's not correct. Okay, I mean, it's, yeah, totally different. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do here is, I think that we're still too far away because we go down 2,400 up to 3,500. So I want to tighten that because we're at 3,100. So I really want to get plus or minus 300 square feet in these bigger houses. Plus or minus 300 square feet is good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go to plus. So if we're say 3,100, so we're going to go 2,800 to 3,400. Oops, gosh. What did I say? To 3,400, correct? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that really only gave us 5 matches. But we don't want to get too far size-wise, because size is important. So what would you do here for an adjustment? How can we get a few more comps in here? We can change things we've already plugged in. Because right now we've got 2 new constructions and then 2 2020s and a 2019. So what would you do here? Out where? At this point, I wouldn't go out yet. But there is something I would expand here. Yes. So I would go back a whole year. Okay, that gives us a little bit more to choose from. Okay, now we have a little more to go off of here. Okay, I wouldn't go past a year. So if we go back a year and we don't get what we need, then I would start going outside of the neighborhood, but within the school district. And we'll talk about that here in a second. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is, we looked at our listing. We had an idea of the condition of our listing. Now, we're not necessarily looking at aesthetics like, oh, this one's all white and gray, and this one's, you know, brown and, you know, traditional versus modern or whatever. We're not necessarily looking for that. We're just looking for condition of finishes. You know, is it in good condition? Are the upgrades a comparable level? Okay, so we're going to go through and look at this. Now, this is a brand new one. This is going to be our competition. It's not going to be a comp. We're just going to get an idea. So our competition here, and there's not going to be much information on it, but it's selling at $172 a foot, which I can tell you right now is going to be way higher than where we're going to be. Okay, but you can see there's not going to be a whole lot. It's not even built. So what I would say at this point is, This isn't even gonna be competition because somebody probably looking, this one's probably, you know, several months out. So we can just,
Like we would use it for comp, right?
we're not gonna use new construction for comp, but we're gonna use it for competition. So if this new construction was close to being finished, I would say, hey, we need to keep an eye on it. But since it's not, and it's a ways out, we can just omit this altogether, okay? So now we're gonna go back to the next one. This one's a new construction, it's not gonna be a comp, so we're gonna skip right past it. Okay, so here's our first one we're gonna look at. Apparently they love the porch. Okay, so we don't have any pictures, which doesn't, listen, guys. Nobody wants to steal your pictures, and if they do, you can get them in trouble for it. Stop taking down your pictures from your listings when they're done. We need them to be able to run effective market analysis on properties. Nothing drives me more crazy than this. I hope this person, I know this person. He's not in our office, so I can say what I want about him. Stop taking down pictures. They're valuable for market analysis purposes. I need to see what this house is like. Okay, so we're gonna pretend we looked at this house and it was very comparable to ours. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna click it and mark it. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one. Okay, here's another one. 2015, almost 3,000 square feet, checking all the boxes. We've got some pictures. We're gonna click through it. Front looks pretty comparable, right? All looks pretty similar, right? Good landscape. Okay, so nothing added back here, right? This is all temporary, so we're good here as far as being comparable. We've got wood tile here. That is an awful angle. Do not ever take a picture with that angle. But again, we've got what? Brick fireplace, we've got wood tile floors. Okay, those are some. Again, nice lights, good paint. We've got granite counters. They've got darker cabinets. They've got stainless appliances, but overall, pretty comparable as far as quality of finishes we've seen so far, right? We've got your basic ceramic tile. Okay, so we don't have crown. That's, I mean, crown isn't going to give you hundreds of dollars, right? But we got double vanity, granite counters, walk-in shower. So what would you say this is compared to ours? Very similar, right? Oh, they even got a basketball goal. Very similar. This is the community pool. One thing I will tell you is just in looking at this house, are these professional pictures? Don't ever do this to your clients. Pictures are 150 bucks. Like, be a professional. I hope this person's not in our office. I'm not going to scroll. Be a professional and order professional pictures on all of your listings, period. It needs to happen. I mean, it really needs to happen. I don't care how hot the market is and how quick things are selling. Do professional photos, okay? All right, so I would say this house is pretty much 100% home run comp for us. Wouldn't you agree? Okay, we're gonna mark it. Next one. Okay, 2014, or no, this one's 2020. It's a new construction home. So this is like a builder model. So we're gonna move past this one. New construction here, we're gonna move past this one. Okay, so this is a 2015. So we're gonna dig into this one. Okay, so they look like they probably updated their exterior, painted the brick, but that's not like a value adding thing here, right? They've got the wood entry, new paint inside. So they've done some updates here. I would say this one's probably a little more updated from an appeal standpoint, but it's not maybe going to drive a huge dollar value, but it is a little more updated. So this may drive more of an appeal, like a buyer preference than a dollar value. Hey, Bob's back.
Oh, man.
Hey.
Hello.
All right, so this one, like I said, it's more of an appeal thing than, or a personal preference thing than maybe a dollar value thing. But this does have the upgraded flooring throughout all of the main areas, so that will give it a little bit more value. Because like, remember on the other ones, they had this basic ceramic tile in the entry and in the kitchen, and they only upgraded it in the living room, where this one has it continuous from the entryway all the way through the kitchen, dining, and living room area. So that will give this one a little bit of value. But we still have your granite counters, your nice lighting, so all that's pretty much the same.
The nicer crown molding and the floor molding.
Yep, they have the floor and they have the crown, which ours had, right? Ours had the bigger baseboards and the crown molding. This one has the crown. So still, I think this one's still going to be a pretty good comp so far. We haven't seen outside, but we've got, this is master bath. So we've got single vanity here, or was that, no, I guess that's a guest bath. Is that a guest bath? Oh no, that's the master bath. Okay, and it has a walk-in shower, but it looks like it only has maybe one sink, unless they just didn't give us a good picture. Good sized bedrooms, no crown in the bedrooms. Secondary bathrooms, good. So we're looking at these, and I would say still this one's probably appeal wise, maybe a little bit cuter, but overall pretty comparable, right? Outside, yeah, there's not really a major upgrade outside that would drive this price up. So would we call this one a comp? Okay, so this one's a comp. Okay, here's another one. So this one's not new construction, almost exact same. So, okay, we got some beams, we got the upgraded flooring. We do have some upgraded shelving here. So this one's pretty comparable. I would say from an appraisal standpoint, an appraiser would probably use this from what we're seeing, even though it seems a little bit more updated. It's got some updated lighting here, but it also has the 4-inch baseboards down here. Okay, basic lighting there. So it has some ceiling treatment here in the master bedroom instead of the crown molding. Double vanity. So again, pretty simple. Now, the one good thing about like a neighborhood like this, and I don't know if you know this neighborhood, but in this neighborhood, it makes comps a little easier because it's one builder through the whole neighborhood. So you're not getting a big variation in quality of construction, right? Okay, so I think overall, this one's pretty close. These rooms are a little funky, but okay, so let's see outside if there's anything. There was no outside pictures. So what I will say is something's telling me something weird about this outside. Do you see how, and a key to any listing when they don't typically show like backyard photos is something's wrong with the backyard. Because you always put backyard photos unless there's something wrong with the backyard. And I see like trees here, like almost right up against the back of the house. So something's telling me something's a little funky here. Okay, but obviously I can't get to the bottom of it. But I'm going to say overall, this is probably a pretty decent comp. New construction here, so we're going to skip it. This is an existing one, so this should be a good one. Again, we're going to go through the same process, right? I'm not going to go into granular detail, but like we can look at this and say, okay, we're pretty close. Do these pictures look weird? Is this virtual staging? I actually think this is a vacant house and that's virtual staging. Okay. It looks very weird, but we've got a pretty comparable house. This one has the upgraded flooring throughout. Okay, so we're going to call this one a comp. The bathroom's a little newer style, but still comparable quality finishes, right? So we're going to call this one pretty comparable unless we see something outside. Yeah, just okay. And that building, see, that building is not part of this property, so it doesn't add value. So that's a good thing. So we want to make sure that this isn't included in this sale. So I would say that one's pretty comparable. So we're gonna take that one as a comp. And then we've got one more, new construction, we're ignoring it. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 comps. That's great. Anywhere 4 to 5, you're solid, okay? An appraisal needs a minimum of 3 sold comps and 1 pending comp to complete an appraisal, unless they get a waiver. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna hit this one line CMA button. And this is gonna give you this fancy little printout of the comps that you chose. So the one that didn't have pictures was at 134. And then, so what I would suggest, if I'm looking at this, is everything is looking at 141, 147, 145, 147. So that 134, I would almost, in this case, say, throw it out. Because we couldn't get enough, it's out of bed with the rest of the comps by $6 a square foot. And we couldn't get enough information. If we were short, I would keep it in. But since we have a couple of other really good ones, I would probably just throw that one out and say our range is 141 to 147 on here. Now, with that said, what would you say the condition was of the 141 to 147 on all of those that we looked at? But what was this, what condition? Like, were they, did they appear to be in good, clean condition? Whereas was it cluttered, decluttered? Like, did like what, when they were staged and photographed, what did they look like?
Good condition, clean,
Decluttered,
cluttered.
right? Staged nicely, okay? So that also is gonna play a huge role in your pricing, okay? So if you walk into a house and there's just stuff everywhere and they can't declutter it, that's gonna play a role in the pricing, unfortunately, even if the house is in great shape, because people can't see past the clutter, okay? So it's a very straightforward conversation. So I would say on this house, okay, so let's play a little game here. Let's say if the house is in pretty good condition, then we're gonna be at 141. And if it's like knock your socks off, staged to the nines, it's really cute, then we're gonna be at 147. Okay, so that's the range we're walking in at. But if we go in and it's like we're tripping over kids' toys and there's crayon marks on the walls and stuff like that, then we're probably, because none of the listings that we looked at were in that condition, we're probably gonna be below that 141 range, okay? So we're gonna keep that in mind. Now, what does that conversation sound like with a seller if we want to talk to them about kind of cleaning up the house?
One thing that I've heard, because I haven't done it myself,
Mm-hmm.
is that you encourage them to start packing because they'll need to do it.
100%.
Well, yesterday, not a long ago, I had thought about that Casey mentioned that she heard somewhere that if anything with eyes on the wall, we're removing because we're going to the internet, they're getting ready to look at work. And I had never thought about that.
Mhm.
That's big.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew-
Safety, yeah.
I was afraid, if I would have to do it like in your house, that's a big deal.
Right. Absolutely. So there's a couple of different approaches. If I walk in a house and I really am like, you gotta get this thing cleaned up, I have absolutely said, you know, part of what I do, and this is exactly said, part of what I do is I tell you guys room by room, and we talked about this in the staging class for those of you that were here, but part of my value proposition to you, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, is that I'm gonna go room by room and tell you what we should do with each room and help you to stage each room. Now, we're gonna go room by room, and I'm gonna tell you in a perfect world, everything that I think that, you know, could be done. when we're done, you're gonna have a list. And you're gonna do as much of that list or as little of that list as you can. If you do nothing and we list the house today, I'm gonna list it at this price. If you do everything on my list, then I'm gonna list it at this price. And if you do anything in between, will be between those two numbers. Again, it's completely up to you and what kind of time you have and what kind of resources you have to get that done. And I can sell your house 100% today in its current condition at this price. But if you want to get this price, then these are the things we need to do to get there. And it just depends on how motivated they are by money or if they're motivated by time. Now, I don't have time, I need to get it on the market right now, I just need to sell it. Or I've got kids, I don't have time to deal with it, I just need to get it on the market and be done. Or no, I need every penny that I can get, I'm gonna take the next 2 weeks, I'm gonna do all of these things and I'm gonna sell it for this price. Okay, but when you put it to them that way, that puts the ball in their court and you give them very specific things that they need to do to get done. And I go room to room and I say, I don't care if your garage is full, get half this crap out of here. Okay, get magic eraser, wipe down your baseboards. You know, we're gonna dust off all this and we go room by room. Now, when do we do that?
After you have the listing.
Say that louder.
After you have the listing agreement.
After you have the listing agreement, because that is your value proposition. You do not give them that information until you guys are in contract together. And it is absolutely okay to have a listing agreement signed and not list the property for a month, 2 months, whatever. We just note that in the listing agreement that we're signing the listing agreement today. I'm in fact starting to provide my services today. And we're going to list the property on the MLS approximately on this date. And this listing agreement will be in effect 6 months from the date that it goes active. Do we hear that? How many months?
6 months.
I don't care if our market is crazy hot right now and things are selling in 5 minutes. Write your listing agreements for 6 months. Why? Markets change, deals bust. If you write a 30-day listing contract and you get it under contract in the first week, and then 2 weeks in that deal busts, now you have 5 days left on your listing contract. Well, now you know what I mean? Like, why are we doing that to ourselves? Just give yourselves time. Things happen, deals bust, things go wrong. Write a 6-month listing contract. It's okay. Most listing contract, I mean, I can't remember, maybe out of every listing contract I wrote, maybe 5 were under 6 months ever. It's okay. Okay. Don't provide services until you have a contract. That is part of your value proposition. Okay. Don't provide value until you have a commitment, because I promise you it's happened to me. I thought me and this person were like this and we're going to do this and they're excited. And then their mom's best friend was a realtor. And so we went and staged the house and spent hours going through what needed to be done. And then my mom told me I needed to list with her friend. We didn't have a listing agreement. So I had no, there's nothing I could do, my bad. Okay, you learn the hard way. And I don't want you guys to learn the hard way. Get these things signed up front. Okay, so that conversation is pretty straightforward. If you walk in and the house is great and there's just some few things we need to do, hey, we're gonna list it at this price. These are the couple things I need you to do. We're good. But we're walking into that. So we set the range. The square footage was, what was the square footage? 3011? 3011. So what's our price on this house if it's in perfect condition? Anybody want to tell me what our house is, or price is if we're in perfect condition?
What's our range?
141 to 147, actually 148. Because we're looking at sold price here, right? So 147 was the list price, but it sold for 148. So 445. Okay, that would be our high end, right? Okay, what would be, again, these were all in great condition. All of these comps were in great condition. None of these were staged poorly. None of these looked beat up. Like they were all in great condition. So in fact, like this really is like any of these are in great condition. So what would our lower end of still really good condition be? So 425. Okay. Now, let's just have a conversation around price increments. How do people search for houses? $25,000 price jumps most of the time, right? 100, 125, 150, 175. So if we're deciding between 425 and 430, where should we list it at? We really should list it at 425. You're going to get a much broader buyer pool than if we go just over 425. Now, if we're talking 435 to 425, I wouldn't cut them down $10,000, right? But if our range was 430 to 425 to 430, I would stay at the 425 mark and get a bigger buyer pool. Okay. But this range were 425 to 445. These are all in really good condition. I think that you can go anywhere in between there and still be good. But this is only if it's in impeccable condition. So if you walk into this house and it's in just okay condition, you know you're going to be under 425. So these are the number you're going to write. Probably in my head going into this house, I would write 400 to 445. And my 400 would be like, smells like animals. They have kids everywhere. There's cereal stuck to the wall. And then my 440 would be, this is adorable. They really maintained it well. Okay. Now let's rewind. What did we talk about here? So they might be in an okay position. Why in such a short time? They just bought it a year and a half ago for 360. And now if it's in great condition, it could be as much as 440. They just refinanced it in October for 365. They still have equity. So we, you know, when we were looking at this, we're like, oh crap, this might be a tough conversation. They might have to bring cash to the table. But then when we dug into the comps, we're like, huh, they could have turned a profit on this house in a year. Okay. This is why I'm going back to my past clients and sending them, hey, do you know what your house is worth today? Because even if they just bought it a year ago, they could be turning a good profit on it in today's market. Okay. All right. Does everybody understand what we did here? Okay.
Before we move on.
Yes.
When we got to the 5 results.
Yes.
And then I walked away, I was writing notes down on something, and then you all of a sudden had 11 results or something. What did you do?
I changed it to a year
Oh,
because we didn't have enough. So I went to 365
okay.
because we just didn't have enough. And like I said, I always try to start with 6 months. I always start 6 months in the neighborhood, plus or minus, depending on the size, 200 to 300 square feet. If that doesn't give me what we need, then I go back in time a little bit longer. Now, when you get in this neighborhood, the age is all relatively the same, like 2010 or newer. When you get in neighborhoods where there's a wide range of ages, we're gonna wanna put a cap on age of home as well, okay? Or if we're going outside of a neighborhood because we can't get what we want in a neighborhood, then we're gonna do that as well. So let's hop into this, yes.
The CMA list, is
Yes.
that something you can share with somebody?
Yeah, I print that, and once I nail down the ones that I want, I do print that and take it. And I hate when this is that. Okay, I will even, before I got super comfortable with like remembering the properties, I would number these like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I would have like notes at the bottom, like of the special features of each one. Especially if there was like a range, like if some were super updated and some weren't, I would make notes right at the bottom or on a separate sheet of paper, like number 1, and I would make notes of the condition so that I could, when I'm on site, because again, you don't ever want to predetermine the value until you've seen the property. You want to have that range. So I would make notes of each of the properties so that when I walked on site and I had my range, I would remember kind of which ones were most similar.
So yesterday, for the buyer that's looking for an investment property,
Mhm.
they specifically asked me to send them the comp. Is that a sheet that I can share with them?
Oh,
Is that
this?
just
Yeah,
too much?
No, this is actually for clients.
Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't look at disclosures.
No, yeah, no, this just gives you the MLS number, the address, when it closed, the square footage, bedroom, bathroom, year built, price. I mean, the only things you don't want to share is like the the county assessor pages or the realtor printout of the MLS sheets.
Okay. cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, what I usually do, in the list presentation, if we get to it,
Mhm.
is I take a client pool. Keep the point and discuss the pricing, compare them. But I have one that gives you that highlighted features on the house.
Mhm.
That they, when they look at the, or whatever.
Yeah.
They give it to them, and I ask them to compare their house.
To that house. Right.
I ask them to break their house based on that.
No, absolutely.
Because that was.
Especially if you're struggling to get on the same page with pricing, that's, you say, hey, well, here's the comps at the price that you want to list at. How do you compare to this? Now, again, a lot of people look at their house with rose-colored glasses and think that their house, is the best on the block. So, but if you can show them and set that expectation, great. Right.
And I asked them to compare them. How's your kitchen compare? How's this room
Mhm.
compare? And I haven't just heard this, I tell them, you're down the fire looking at this, how did you do it?
Mhm.
It really is.
Right. And so the other thing that you can do is if you get a seller that pushes back and say, you're like, and you're telling them, hey, now, granted, today's market, we're seeing a lot of contracts right in appraisal gap coverage where they're saying, hey, I'm willing to pay $5,000 over the appraisal or $10,000 over the appraisal. So that's a little different. But in normal times, even 6 months ago, that was not a thing. And that's not going to be a thing forever. So the conversation when, a person wants to list a house for higher than what it can appraise for, you have to have that conversation of, hey, we can sell the house for $1 million, but an appraiser is going to come in and determine what the true market value is based on the same exact comps that we're looking at. And that's the most that they can get their loan for. So either the buyer has to have that cash to cover the difference, or we have to reduce the price, or we're going to have to meet in the middle somewhere. So we can't just sell it for whatever price. We have to have boundaries on it. That, that's the good appraisal conversation. The second conversation is if you get a seller who is just adamant about listing at one price that you're not comfortable with and you still want to take the listing, what can you do?
You can tell them, we'll set it for that price for a certain amount of days. If it doesn't work out, then we'll go ahead and put it out.
Exactly. And is that just a conversation?
Write it in the contract.
Why can't we put that in an additional provisions? Right? I mean, because magically people forget things, right? So why can't we put that in additional provisions? Like, hey, if we do not have X number of, if we don't have X number of showings or offer, or if we're not under contract by this date, we're gonna reduce it to this price. But have that conversation. Say, okay, you know what? I don't feel like this is where we need to be on price, but we're gonna give it a shot. And if we're not under contract by this date, will you agree to reduce to my recommended price? Have that conversation, set the expectations, okay? All right, let's move on to another property. So I'm just gonna clear this all together. And we are going to look at let's do 3228 Northwest 188th Terrace. So we're gonna do like we did before. We're gonna search for it. So 3228. And then we're gonna do 188. And then we wanna make sure we get terrace. Okay. So again, it's up here a few times. It's got a couple of different square footages. Okay, so let's look at this expired one here. Okay, where is this one? Oh yeah, I remember this. Okay, perfect. Okay. Yep, okay, perfect. No, I want the one before this one. Okay, so we have this property here. So we're gonna look, it's 2106 square feet, built in 2016, okay? It's in the Grove. Again, we get the fun, and then we get the phases afterwards, like we had talked about before. Okay, so we're gonna go in, we're gonna look at this house. Now, pretty standard outside. It's got the wood floors throughout all of the main areas, carried into the bathroom, into the hallway. We've kind of got like a decorative shiplap wall here. Island kitchen, pendant lights, some beams across the ceiling. Crown molding, granite counters. 3228 Northwest.
I'm not getting it either.
I just moved back here to this.
So like we talked, sometimes less is more. Sometimes putting in the Northwest, sometimes putting in the terrace. Sometimes less is more. Just put in the minimum and then go from there, okay? All right, so we've got crown molding, we've got vaulted ceilings, we've got wood beams, we've got granite counters, we've got the upgraded flooring kind of carried throughout. Okay, so crown molding in the bedroom. We got a walk-in shower, double vanities. And I like when we're looking through these, you don't, I mean, once you get good at it, you can flip through these pretty quick and say, oh, this is a good match. You know what I mean? It shouldn't take you hours to thumb through these. Bedrooms, decent size, not super big, nice secondary bathroom. Now here, this is one thing I like a lot of people kind of glaze over, but when you're looking at it specifically like bathroom tubs and showers, you'll notice this is a tub with a tiled shower versus some of the bathrooms you'll see where it's just like a plastic insert shower. That's, you know, those are differences, right? So this is like, and I'm gonna, the reason I'm pointing this out is because in this particular neighborhood, there's a bunch of builders. So you're gonna have probably 10 different builders in this neighborhood. Their Home Creations is one of the builders in this neighborhood. And I'm not saying they're a bad builder, but they don't tile in their showers. They do shower inserts. They don't use granite in all of their bathrooms, and they'll use granite in the main area, but then they'll use like just a little like prefab counter and prefab sink in the secondary bathrooms. So when you're pumping out houses in a neighborhood where you have the more custom homes that have the more custom bathrooms, you're going to want to make sure that you don't include those as comps on these, okay? Because the quality of construction is different. So this house, when I'm pulling the comps, I'm definitely not going to include the ones that are built by Home Creations. I'm not, like I said, I'm not knocking them as a builder. It's just not, they're not, the quality of construction is different compared to this builder or some of the other builders in the neighborhood because they don't do all of the upgrades, okay? So keep that in mind when you're doing these comps, okay? This one gets a little more fun because we get to look at different builders and all the houses don't look the same. So this is the actual study, but it does have a closet, so it can count as a bedroom. Nice laundry room, but as you can see through this whole thing, the wood floors, except for in the couple of the bedrooms, the wood floors carry throughout. Nice flat backyard, nice covered patio, extended concrete. Okay, so good house, right? So now we're gonna go to what? Well, where do we go first? Tax information. Okay, so now we have the tax information. So again, we can see where the property taxes are. We can see the legal description of the property. Now we're going to go down here. We have that range of what the house could sell for. Again, we're not going to pay too much attention to that because it's not, you know, it's just a ballpark range. We don't see any major discrepancies up here in the size. So we've got the 2106 square foot. So there's really nothing that's raising too big of a thing. It's interesting here. You see where this says condition, poor? Like this is why this is, you know what I mean? And that poor is what bases this price off of down here, right? So kind of, this is again, just generically pulled information. That's why we don't put a ton of weight into this, but there is good elements to pull from this. Like, so again, why they would rate this as condition, poor, quality, average, I have no idea, right? But it's saying that if it was in great condition, it would sell for probably 308. If it was in poor condition, it would probably sell for close to 267-ish. It tells you it last sold in May of 2019. For 267, and so they bought it for 267, and let's see, 2019. So what do we know about the financing here? But they bought it in 2019, right? Oops. And they bought it in 2019 for 267, and then they did what? They refinanced it for 175. So they probably have a good bit of equity in this property, right? Okay, another thing, I didn't mention this the last time, but I will mention this here because this is very, 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 very important. See the names here, buyer name. We want to make sure when we're doing our listing appointments that we, if there's two names there, like we just need to get to the bottom of who owns the house. If you see a trust there, if you see an LLC there, what do we need to tell them at the time of the listing appointment? But no, if we see a trust or an LLC, what do we need to tell them at the time of the listing appointment? Not the deed,
You know, paperwork about LLC.
all of the
Who
paperwork.
signs, who's the signers for the LLC, all of the details
When do we need that?
at the beginning. 'Cause
Why?
You need to know who's eligible to sign the paperwork, so if the person you're meeting with doesn't have the right to buy, to sell the property, then you're meeting nothing. You have to make sure,
Exactly.
that
So-
they have the right to actually sell it.
Right, so whoever is the signer authority on the trust, the LLC, you need to have those documents up front. Well, first of all, if you don't get to the bottom of that up front, and then you're like, oh, the title company 2 weeks before closing says they need a copy of your LLC documents or your trust documents. And they're like, oh yeah, they're in the back of our storage unit. I can't get to them. And you didn't tell them that, like, they're gonna be pretty upset with you, right? So, and then you get to the bottom of it, and then we don't have the right signatures, the right IDs, I mean, whatever the case may be. So upfront, see what it says here, determine, make sure that we have the appropriate documentation. And the very first thing I do when we go under contract is I send a copy of those documents to the title company and say, here is what we have. Is this what you need? Or is there additional documentation that will be needed? The same thing if somebody tells me, hey, my spouse can't be at closing, we're gonna need to do a power of attorney. I get that power of attorney signed on day one. We send it to the title company and to the lender, make sure that they approve it. Because if one date is missed, then you can't sign the day of closing. So get those things approved up front. If like I'm selling a house right now that I just listed yesterday. It's this little old lady her and her deceased husband were the original owners of the house from 1978. Guess what?
He's deceased.
He's been deceased for 10 years. I still need an original death certificate. So before she starts packing and moving to Sallisaw, I need her to pull out the death certificate, and we need to get that to the title company so they can hold it, because I'm not gonna hold it, and I don't want her holding it and it accidentally getting packed, right? Even though he died 10 years ago, he was original owner with her. What if you buy a house, you get married, you get divorced, you sell the house, so the person that you married and divorced never was part of the buy or the sell?
You have to have proof that your name changed all those different times.
Well, you do, but you also have to get with the title company. You have to show them the divorce documentation. They'll tell you what they need. So we need to find out this information. If you're just meeting with one person, hey, did you get married? Did you get divorced? Or were you widowed during this time? I need any of that information. We need to get that to title right away. Title company needs to get to the bottom of exactly what they need, because we don't want to be chasing down divorce decrees.
Well, yeah, because if you get the divorce degree and it says that he has to sign off on it.
And then he hates you and he won't come, and now we're having to get attorneys involved. I mean, right? We deal with a lot of craziness. We could have siblings that are fighting over an inheritance and won't come and sign. So just make sure when we're doing this, we look at the names, make sure we're dealing with those people, or if it's a trust, we're dealing with those people, or we're asking the right questions. Have you been married? Have you been divorced? Have you been deceased? I know it gets, have you been deceased? Wow. Is the person that, you lived with and owned this house with deceased? We need to have those conversations, even though they can be awkward, okay? That's just a sidebar, but very, very, very important to do upfront to avoid those long delays down the road. Okay, so look at the names, make sure you're meeting with the right people. We look like we have some equity in here. So now what are we gonna do? Search where? The MLS? Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go back here. We're gonna go search, residential, quick search. Okay, what are we gonna select here? And active, right? Yep. What are we gonna set for sold? I'll do 185. Okay. Now what? Okay,
And then the neighborhood name of the actual.
okay. Oh, not me. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple rows, but this is the one we want. Okay, so we're gonna, and it is that size, so we're gonna go here. Okay. Now we still have a ton of results, so we're gonna go back to our criteria. We still have 146, so now what? Okay, let's start one other place first, but I do want to do square footage. Now, this neighborhood started in 2007, 2008. Okay, and they're still building a lot of new construction. So for the sake of doing comps, and since there's so many here, my recommendation is to simply omit all new construction at this point to do our comps. But then at the very end, we're gonna look at the active new construction just to see our competition, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go down here and this, I've added a lot of pre-selected fields that I like through add remove. And I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna do year built type, and I'm gonna make sure I select existing. That's gonna automatically omit all new construction, okay? So now we went down by half. Okay, so now we have 75 houses. So now we're gonna go to square footage. So we were, was it 2106? Okay, so what are we gonna do our square footage? 300 plus or minus, so 18. Okay. So now we got 35, pretty good range. Again, remember, we are going to omit the ones that are not comparable quality of that level of builder, right? So that should narrow out some of these. So now we're gonna go to the results, and I'm gonna, we're not gonna do the pending at this time. We're gonna just look at the sold. So I'm gonna go here. Now I can tell you just by looking at the front that this is Home Creations one. It's not a bad thing. I just know what their design style is. Okay, so that's their master. See how they have, like, that's a Formica countertop here. These people did some updating themselves. Okay, so that one, not gonna be, it could be a comp, but it is a different builder style, so not a great comp. This one, now, what I will say on that one is that one there was an upgrade, their upgraded line. So if you're familiar with Home Creations, they have 4 different lines. They have like their baseline that has, like, they don't brick all the way around. They don't do the upgraded flooring throughout, so that you just, when you come in the front door, you just get like a little square of tile, and then everything else is carpet. So those kinds of things. So, and then it kind of progresses. So this one would be one of their more upgraded, one of their more upgraded lines, because they did tile the showers and stuff like that. And they did like barn doors and different things. And maybe the sellers added these things on after the fact. I don't know. But I think we're going to find better comps. So that's why I'm going to skip that one. This one, again, is one of theirs. So these sellers look like they did that flooring on their own. I can tell you the sellers did that flooring on their own because they changed directions, and builders don't do that. So they updated some of this stuff on their own. So you don't ever do that. But it has some updates. It's not bad. I think the one we're comparing it to is a little bit better. So I might leave this one out in hopes that we find some better comps. What do you guys think? This is going to be, yeah, so this one probably, it's nice. I mean, it's got an upgraded room back there. This one's not bad, but I still think this one's not bad. This one may be a comp. Let's see, it had the wood floors. It had 2 fireplaces, his and hers vanities, walk-in shower. And had a tiled shower there, has some crown molding, has a built-in bench. This one, look at that. So this is going to hurt this value on this house, right? Cute, but it is going to hurt it a bit, right? So I probably wouldn't use this one as a comp. Okay, let's look at this one. Upgraded flooring, crown molding. Now, side note, staging this house. Take out about half this furniture. And half the decoration. But upgraded nice, right? It's got granite, it's got good backsplash, stainless appliances, it's got crown molding. So it's not bad. This might be a decent comp. So it doesn't have the walk-in shower, but it does have a decent bathroom, but it does have the, doesn't have the upgraded counters. So I would say maybe, but this would be on a lower end comp. Must have had like a pool or trampoline or something there. So I would probably say, yes, we could put this on, but if we find some better ones, we may omit that one, okay? This one's not gonna be a comp, I can tell you that one right now. Here. Okay, so this is just ceramic tile throughout. This is still very builder grade finishes throughout. So I would say that one's not a comp. Okay, now we're getting into a little bit more of the custom builders. So you see the difference between like the one we just looked at that was kind of builder grade throughout compared to this one where you've got like the naughty alder cabinets, you've got the crown molding, you got more of the stone fireplace, the higher grade floors. So this one, even though it's the older style, still finish wise is a little bit more quality of construction. Do you agree? Okay, let's make sure there's no other factors that we're missing. Yes, that's just like a little garden area or something, so that's nothing abnormal. So I would say this one's probably a pretty good comp. Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
Okay. A little older, pretty simple. This is actually an original Tabor home, I can tell you that. Basic cabinetry, it's okay. It hasn't probably been updated since they bought it, and this is probably one of the older ones in the neighborhood. It's a little cluttered. So if like, this would be one of the ones where if we're listing it and it's a little cluttered, a little bit more wear and tear, this would be probably a comp that I would use. It's not bad. It does back up to a green belt, so that will give that one a little bit. I would say we omit that one with the green belt influence, and then a little bit dated. I think that that one's probably not as good of a comp. Okay, so here, I hate when people start with pictures of the kitchen. Okay, side entry, but no big deal. We got crown molding. So this is like a slate style floor, wood style floor. Shaker cabinets, vaulted ceiling. This one's a little funky layout though. Doesn't that seem weird? So that may be an influencing factor, is the funky layout of this house, like the choppy rooms versus like the nice big open floor plan. What do you think? We keeping it or we tossing it? I don't understand this floor plan at all. What do you want to do? I'm leaning towards tossing it too. I think there's going to be other influences on that one with how weird the layout is as opposed to the nice big open layout of ours, that would make that one less appealing. Okay.
Does it matter when you're looking at, I know some last one, that we did, there was some order stories, some story, did that advertise well?
When, okay, so 2-story versus single story. Can you tell me what the difference is between 1-story, 1.5 story, and 2-story? Well,
So is it just the alternate?
okay, so yes, 2-story, there's 2-story, there's 1.5 story, and there's 1-story. 1-story is pretty straightforward. Everything's on one level. What is 1.5 versus 2? That's a better question, because obviously 1.5 and 2 both have stairs.
Is 1.5 one and there's just like one room upstairs?
1.5 is just one room or just a small subset of square footage on the second floor. 2-story is where there is a more substantial amount of square footage on the second floor. So if you had just a bonus room with a bathroom, that's 1.5. But if you have a bonus room, a bathroom, and a bedroom, that's where we start pushing towards the 2-story, where you start to get a pretty substantial amount of square footage upstairs, where it's not just one room. That's where you push to the 2-story, where you get at least like 1/3 of the square footage on that second level. That's where we go from 1.5 to 2. Okay, so if you're listing a house and it's just a bonus room up there, a bonus room and a bathroom, you're going to categorize that as 1.5. Okay, so no, that doesn't make a huge difference in when we're looking at these things. Okay, so this one, it's got naughty altar cabinets, it's got upgraded flooring, it's got crown molding. It looked like it had upgraded pendant lights here. Okay, granite counters. It's not cluttered. I mean, I'm telling you, like, when things are clean and neat, it makes a big difference. They must have been a hairdresser. Got the upgraded flooring in the bedroom. This is definitely a single guy that lives here. See, told you. Okay, but when we're looking at not the decorations, but the actual quality of the construction, what do you think? This is a pretty good comp, right? So we're gonna pick that one. Okay, we're just gonna, I'm not gonna go through all 50 of these, guys. We only have so much time. But you get the idea. That's what we just, you get the idea, right? Of what we're doing here. Let me So that you're gonna, but when you're doing this, I want you guys to go through each of these, right? And narrow them down to your best ones that are most comparable. Because you can get through here and you can find some really good, with this many, you can find some really good ones. That's why I was being kind of picky earlier. When you have 50 that show up in your search in just 6 months, you can get really picky with what you choose, okay? So be picky and try to find the ones that are most similar. Okay, so we're just gonna say this is one, and I know that's probably pretty similar, Cape Cod style, but see, this one's probably, yeah, so this one's probably pretty similar, so I'm gonna pick this one.
The 3-car garage doesn't add value to the garage.
It adds some, but with, like we talked about at the beginning, if you're really looking at adding value from a 3-car to a 2-car, what you need to look at is comparable houses in the neighborhood that are 2-car and comparable houses that are 3-car, and look at the price difference between the two. In most cases, you're only talking a couple $1,000s, $2,000 to $4,000 for an additional garage. In most cases, bathroom, like, so garages are a little easier. They're about 2 to 4. Bathrooms, like half bathrooms, are about 2,000. Full bathrooms are about 4,000, maybe 5,000, depending on how nicely finished out they are. Pools are the ones that you can't gauge. Pools could give you 5,000. Pools can give you 60,000. Pools could give you 80,000 in some of your luxury neighborhoods. That truly depends. But like your garages, your bathrooms, those kinds of things. Your bedrooms will never give you anything. Okay. All right. So again, we have a good list here, right? So we're just going to say we went through, did this on all of them. We're going to hit our 1-line CMA. And where are we at? 145 to 160 a foot. And what was our square footage? Okay. So where are we at? Somebody tell me our prices. Okay. Right, so that's our range going in, right? So 305 to 335 would be my range going in. So if it's in absolute perfect condition, then we can go in at 335, but it has to be in perfect condition. Now, one of the things you're going to want to look at is look here at the list price per foot versus the sold price per foot, right? And that also plays a factor, because appraisal value will get you that 335. But did they list that high, right? Well, one of them did, right? But look at what they're listing at, because sometimes that's where we talked about before, where maybe listing it at 325 is going to give you a better chance at competing offers to drive it to 335. Right? So if you're seeing a big jump between list price to sold price in these comps, then you may be better off at leaving your comps closer to the list price per square foot and allowing the market to drive it to the higher sold price per foot. Okay? As opposed to maxing it out and limiting your buyer pool. Does that make sense? If we can put it in at 325 and get 10 offers to choose from and drive it over 325, I'd much rather that than list it at 335 and have one offer to choose from. So just those are the things we think about, right? And again, as the market changes, our strategy changes. Okay. So these are the things we want to keep in mind. Now, a couple of other things that we want to touch on is age. So when we get into older neighborhoods where you're dealing with houses built 1970, 1960, 1980, even 1990s, like where do we want to cap our age range when we're doing this? Because that's done right here in your built. Plus or minus what?
5 years.
Plus or minus 5 to start, but how far can we go out from an appraisal perspective? 10. Okay, so if you're dealing with houses where we've got like older houses, we can, or a range of ages, we can go plus or minus 10. That's totally fine. Okay, now let's talk about houses, like older houses. You've got an older house, whether it's 1930 or 1990, and it's been updated. What do we want to do? If you have a house that's been totally updated, but it's an older home, what do we do?
My best guess would be you look at older houses that have also been renovated. You'd have to look at all the pictures.
Right. You want to get as close to it as you can, because here's the problem. Like I just listed a house, and it was that little older, the old lady, right? And they have not updated. I mean, it has the original stove. She hasn't updated a single thing. But like when I looked at the houses in the neighborhood that had been updated, they weren't pulling much of a difference than the houses that had not been updated at all. She's getting 95, 96 a foot. Houses that had been completely updated were getting like 102 a foot. So, you know, you want to compare apples to apples. So we want to make sure we're looking at houses that have been updated. So what would be a strategy if you were looking at houses that had been, you have to list a house that's been totally updated and you're trying to find comps for it, and you can't find comps plus or minus, 5 or 10 years in that neighborhood? What would you do?
Expand your search
How?
by neighborhood, like area.
Right. So you can go outside of that neighborhood. Yeah, right. Now, what are we looking for? We cannot change school districts. Okay, because there is a big influence in school districts. So we cannot change school districts. So if we go outside of the neighborhood, we want to make sure we're staying within the same school districts. We also try not to cross over major boundary lines. So some of our school districts will span different like boundary lines, like, north of the turnpike versus south of the turnpike, or, east of the 35 versus west of the 35. We try not to span major boundary lines, okay? We get that a lot out in like the Choctaw, Nakoma Park area. We don't want to go north or south of the I-40, okay? So keep those things in mind. We want to try to not cross major boundary lines. We definitely do not want to change school districts, but it is okay to go outside of the neighborhood if we're struggling to find comps within the neighborhood. So plus or minus 10 years. And then what I would do is I would put in the address of your house and then start out 1 mile, and then, and put the school district in, start out 1 mile and then go out 2 miles. I would not go out any further than 3 or 4 miles unless we're in a really rural area. The only time I had to do just the entire school district was a rural house on acreage in Deer Creek, and then a house in Tuttle, and a house in Newcastle, where I had to just use the entire school district. And we can talk about that, but you have a question.
Yeah, I have a question about school districts. So if you put the Oklahoma school district, those are different. High school is different. Even elementary school.
Right.
So how do you decide which school to use? Is it the high school? Is it?
Well, and so when you're looking at, it gets so tricky in Oklahoma City because it's so, there's little carve outs. So I almost just say Oklahoma City School District as a whole, because those carve outs, unless you're just in one that's like higher rated than all of the others, then I would limit it to just that. Okay, because that would be the only case where there would be a really good influence. I would omit, if you got a comp that was in one that had like a super high rated elementary school, or a super high rated, or if yours was in a higher rated one, but a lot of times those have less of an influence, right? But like, for example, properties in Bethany. If your property is Bethany's address is not Bethany schools per se. So properties in Bethany schools drive higher value than properties in just Bethany, period. So that is an influence, right? And so if you have a property that's in Bethany, you need to verify if it's in Bethany schools versus if it's just in Bethany limits. Okay, because if it's in Bethany schools, you only want to look at properties that are in Bethany schools. But if it's in Bethany and not Bethany schools, then you don't want to use comps that are Bethany school comps because they won't truly be good comps. Does that make sense?
Probably geographically in Oklahoma City, if you're close, the school system will matter as much, unless it's an exception. But the exception will be good.
In Oklahoma City, correct, yes. So like I had a property in Tuttle that was on acreage, and it was Tuttle address Bridge Creek schools. So I had to go all of Bridge Creek schools to find comparable properties for this house. Because out there it was on acreage and it was so hard to find comps that was the one time I couldn't use mileage as a boundary. I literally just pulled everything in Bridge Creek schools that was comparable to that and was able to use that as my comps. I did that also for a pretty unique property in Deer Creek, where it had a pool, it had a workshop, it had been updated. But it was more rural and it was on land. And so we had to look all of Deer Creek and not just within like a couple mile radius. So there are exceptions that you go outside of a neighborhood or go outside of like a 2 to 3 mile radius, but those should be exceptions. And again, anytime we're looking, we're going to go as tight as we can and then change one element and see what that brings you. So change 6 months to 12 months. And if that doesn't give you what you need, then change 2 plus or minus 200 to plus or minus 300. Right? And then if we're looking at years, go plus or minus 5 to plus or minus 10 and see what that adds in. And if we're still not getting enough, then say, okay, I'm gonna go outside of this neighborhood 1 mile, but this school district, and see what it does. And don't just go in and say, oh, this didn't give me, let me change this, this, and this, right? Change one element at a time, see how much that gives you, and then slowly add elements in. On the flip side, the deal we just did, where we had so many comps to pull the ones that are most like that one, like floor plan wise, layout wise, because those things, even though the price, like it's not necessarily the price, but it's the desirability, like those ones that had the funky backyard, the inside could have been almost identical, but that backyard is going to drive that price. The other one that had the funky, really choppy layout, that's going to influence the price versus the nice big open floor plan. So use those things when you're, that's why we really need to dig in and look at pictures and things like that.
Is there a way on the MLS to filter out who the builder is?
It's not viable because they're not always input. So I would, unfortunately, can't, it's not reliable. The same thing, like when somebody tells you, just as like when somebody says, hey, I want a 3-bedroom with a study or a 4-bedroom, what do you do?
Because some people use that 4th bedroom as a study and.
But you'll get a buyer that says, hey, I either need a 3-bedroom plus a study or a 4-bedroom. Well, guess what? There's no way to set that search up. So what do? You set it up as a 3-bedroom and you tell your buyer, I'm sorry, You're gonna get some 3 bedrooms without a study, but I'd rather you get some stuff that you don't need versus missing out on something that you would be really great for you. Because if I put in 3 bedroom and study, we're gonna miss out on 4 bedrooms that don't have a study, because the way the search works is it will do 3+ bedrooms, but a study will be a requirement. So if it says 4 bedroom and then it doesn't have a study, it will just omit it. Like, it's weird. Or if somebody tells you, hey, I could do 2.5 baths or more. Well, if you do 2 baths and then 1/2 bath, then it will omit just true 3 baths. Because it'll look for only 2.5 baths, 3.5 baths, 4.5 baths. It'll always require that 1/2 bath. So you just have to have the conversation like, hey, I'm gonna keep your search as broad as possible so that we don't miss stuff, but I know it's gonna send you some things that don't. I hear you. I just don't want you to miss stuff. So, are there any questions? I will tell you, even today, like Leslie and I, when we run comps, we send them to each other a lot of times and say, what do you think? I mean, some are easy, right? But there's others that are like, hey, what do you think about this? I'm doing pictures on this one this afternoon that's down by Paseo. Like, that is a cluster of what you get, right? And so like I told my seller, I said, it could go from 225 to 250. She was doing some updates before we listed it, but until I see what you do to it, I really can't give you, a real price. And I ran that off for her. I said, hey, this is what I think. And she's like, oh yeah, we still run things off. There's no problem with asking your colleagues to, hey, this is what I want to list this for. What do you think? It's great practice for both of you. So use your resources. Hey, if you're getting a listing, put it in the group me. Hey, I'm getting ready to list this. This is what I was thinking about listing it for. Give somebody work to do, give some property, practice for comps. So. Any questions? Yes.
So I have a specific question. So I have someone who's inherited a couple of not so stellar properties, and they want, so they're one in Dell City and one in Spencer.
Yeah.
They want to sell them together.
Okay.
If possible. And I was like, I've seen that where you see, like, you click on a property and it's like, oh, this is part of a package.
Yeah.
Like, is there a more or less effective way?
And so what I will tell you is selling it as a package deal, you're going to get less for the property as opposed to just selling them individually.
Mhm.
So I would highly recommend that you can say, hey, these can be sold as a package deal
Mhm.
and cross promote them,
Mhm.
but there's no reason to do, what would be their reasoning for that?
They don't live here. And
Right.
They're not so stellar. They literally are like, we just don't want them.
Right, but
So
don't
they're
want them
lying.
individually
Yeah,
because you're
so-
opening up your buyer pool
Yes, and that's what I
substantially.
told them. I was like,
Mhm,
"You're gonna get investors who would buy one for
mhm.
30, but they don't want the other one because they only want, say, Dell City.
Right. Well, and it's not even the location, just, the amount of people that want to take on 2 properties immediately. You're just going to open up your buyer pool substantially if you do them individually as opposed to a package deal. So the way I would do that is I would put them, you still have to put them each in as their own entity.
Yes.
You can make a note in there that this can be sold as a package deal with this one, but anytime you say package, what do you think? Discount. So you're gonna get less if you sell them together than if you just sell them individually. Because anybody that's like, well, yeah, if I buy 2 from you, you're gonna give me a discount.
That's what that's what I told them. I was like, okay, buy real estate fees. And I was like,
It's the same, but it's the same. The percentage of one deal is the same as the percentage of 2. It's
so
off
I
the,
told her she doesn't want to deal with it. She's like, can I just sign the titles to you and you deal with it? I was like, no.
no.
I don't
No.
want them either.
Yeah.
Like, the one with like, has no windows and he's full of, like, I don't want them.
Yeah.
She just is like, I don't want to deal with it.
And just tell her, sign the listing agreement, let you get them a contract, and you're still gonna make them more money than them just sitting there having to pay taxes on them.
Yeah. And then nuisance fees.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's why I was so nervous. She was like, I was like, well, I'll get some extra opinions.
Yes, no, 100% separate, because somebody may just come in, I mean, how much are you selling for?
I mean, they're free to her. Her family built both of them.
Yeah.
So they've been in their family for 30 years. She has just been paying nuisance fees to Del City
Yeah,
and Oklahoma City.
Yeah,
because
they're
my mom's lived
always,
there for a couple of years and
Yeah.
owned their property. So at this point, she just is like, whatever I can get for him. The neighbor offered her $1,000. And she's like, I think I can get more than $1,000.
for the land
I
alone.
was like, yes, we can get you more than that.
Yeah,
So I mean, the numbers are just all over the place.
yeah, I mean, I honestly, for something like that, if they're not like, you might just comp the land.
Mhm. Yeah, one of them is probably got it. The other one might be salvaged.
Okay.
Nobody's been in them. She was like, I've not been in them for 5 years. I have no idea the condition. I know one has no door or windows. It's garbage. inside.
Yeah, so I would comp it on the land. Because somebody will come in, tear that down and put
Yeah,
something
they
on
have
it.
almost a half acre. So
Yeah.
they're probably decent at that.
Yeah.
But I just, was like, I don't want them. I'll just. look.
Yeah, yeah, I don't need to inherit your problems,
Yes.
thanks.
No problem.
Yes.
Okay.
But separate is, in any case, separate is always better because you limit your buyer pool substantially.
Mhm.
Any other questions? All right. I feel like I deserve a round of applause for getting you guys out of here 40 minutes early. It's the first for me.